This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
When we started to bring people in and basically saying what we were doing, but more importantly, we were actually doing what we said we were going to do, that really bred trust with our team. And it allowed some of the people that were good core value fits, maybe they didn't even need industry experience, but they started to rise to the top.
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Jeremy Jenson. Jeremy is the founder and CEO of Encore Search Partners. He is an expert on the Entrepreneurial Operating System and prides himself on building Houston's largest privately held executive search firm. He's also a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, a global co-op of over 17,000 entrepreneurs worldwide. I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his leadership experiences. So, Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, John. Excellent.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. And I really like to, dive in a little bit of your success and what you've learned along your leadership journey. But first of all, tell us your story. How did you build your company into 40 employees, over 10 million in annual revenue, and a very good profit margin of 30% EBITDA? So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you do it?
Yeah. So, I started my first business whenever I was 25 years old because I was unemployable, probably like a lot of young entrepreneurs. I was very cocky. I was very arrogant. I knew I was always the smartest person in every single room that I was in. My leaders that were leading me were 20 years, 25 years older. And I just knew that I was better than them, right? And so started my first business at 25. That was an email marketing and lead generation business. Did that for a couple of years. And then I took a look at my client base and I said, man, half of my clients are staffing and recruiting companies. Why am I sitting here making these guys rich? Let me start a recruiting company, right? And so in January of 2013, I started a recruitment business. Still wasn't a great leader, John, but I was really good at generating leads, right? And fortunately, had some early success, built it up to about $1 million in revenue, good profit margins as a kind of like a solo practitioner with 3 or 4 associates supporting me. And kind of just couldn't scale beyond that 1 million, 1.2 million. And so in October of 2016, I brought in a vice president who was skilled at implementing the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is essentially a business framework that was created by a gentleman by the name of Gino Wickman, who wrote a book called Traction. We started implementing Traction in 2016, and that was the growth catalyst for the organization.
Interesting. I've heard that same story from a lot of different people. So what about the Entrepreneurial Operating System that really helped you, or what was it that you were missing when you were trying to do it alone?
Yeah, so really it was that integrator, bringing in the gentleman who started as VP, quickly became COO, and is now the president of the company. We were really good at generating clients. We were really awesome at solving those clients' problems. But we had a revolving door of talent, right? That really weren't comfortable with my leadership style. Maybe I wasn't as patient with them on waiting for their skills to develop or their work ethic to peak, right? And so, when Scott came in, we did a good job of identifying what is our mission, what is our vision, and what are our values. And then we had a tremendous amount of transparency throughout the recruitment process, the onboarding process, coaching and development, mentorship, right? And then, of course, exiting people from the organization if they were in violation of those values, right? And so when we when we started to bring people in and basically saying what we were doing, but more importantly, we were actually doing what we said we were going to do, that really bred trust with our team. And it allowed some of the people that were good core value fits, maybe they didn't even need industry experience, but they started to rise to the top, right? And
Hmm.
so it was those processes, those systems, and that accountability that really allowed us to grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that stands out when you talk about this is, that's one of the struggles with many entrepreneurs is that they get to a certain level and they can't grow any further, right? And they get stuck, and they tend to want to try to hold on tightly to everything. Here in this case, though, you decided, hey, I'm great at a lot of this, but there's some areas I'm struggling, to be able to break through this,
Yeah.
1.5 million barrier. But you said, I'm going to hire somebody and I'm going to listen to them. And that's a real key point. What you said is there's a little humility that says, I need a little bit of help. Right.
Well, yeah,
Was that
no,
hard for you, or
oh,
how did that work for you in
you
terms of
know,
finally
yeah,
admitting you needed some help?
yeah, that's a great question, right? You're a business owner. I think in order to have the confidence to go out and start your own business, you've got to have somewhat of an ego, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
But it really was like maybe my personal life, right? Being married to somebody that was the opposite of me, but I still trusted and respected them. And I knew that if I could handle business with regards to making money, she could handle business and taking care of the household, right? And
Hmm.
so it was kind of like being a very trusting husband allowed me to be a very trusting CEO. And I didn't need to hire a COO that was just like me, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I already was really, really great at what I did. I think that's another common misconception is we hire these proteges and we just teach them our own way, right? But Scott has a completely different style. I'm an extrovert, he's an introvert, right? I'm really good at sales and marketing. He's good at finance, IT, HR, SOPs, structure, coaching, accountability, mentorship, right? I invest in his growth and development. He's in a leadership development program called Vistage, and then we've
Hmm.
got 4 other people that are leaders in our organization that are members in Vistage as well. I spend over $100,000 a year for our Vistage coach to be a coach for our leaders, right? But it's really investing in them that it's allowed me to scale, right? Because then I could really hyper focus on generating leads and closing new business.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard this phrase once, and it says, "If you want to grow, you have to let go." And I think in some cases, it's hard to do an entrepreneur, as a founder, business founder. But if you want to really grow, you've got to bring in the right people. You've got to let go of things. You have to
Yeah.
bring in, I love what you say, bring in people that are the opposite of you or that complement your skill sets,
Yep.
so that you're not just bringing in a bunch of extroverts that are great at sales, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
brought in somebody that strengthen up your weak spot. I've heard that a lot from entrepreneurs, is that if we bring in, look to hire people that shore up your potential weak areas, so that you as a combined with these people become stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the areas you talked about when I was looking through your materials is you have these 7 core principles. Can you talk a little bit about what those are and how that's important in your business, and how you've used those to kind of leverage and to be able to grow?
Yeah. So in 2017, Scott actually tricked me in identifying what my core values were because the way that he asked the question was he said, Jeremy, tell me about the last 10 times that you fired someone. Right. And so I was just going down the list. I fired this person because of this. And then once we had that data as an executive team, we sat down and we looked at it and we created the very first iteration of what were my own personal core values. And I think that that's important for an entrepreneurial owned organization to recognize that when you're small, right, and you're privately held 100% by the owner, the values of the company are really the values of the business owner, right?
Mm,
And so, there were certain things like be responsive and accessible, right? Have a winning attitude, right? Be coachable and resilient, right? And so over the years, every single quarter we sit down as an executive team and we say, hey, are these values still, the benchmark of what the culture is at Encore Search Partners? And so it's evolved. Maybe we've simplified it into one words. maybe once a year we've switched out one and put in a different one, right? Just as we've evolved and gone after different markets. But those 7 core values that exist today at Encore Search Partners are excellence, resilience, gratitude, professionalism, coachable, inquisitive, and competitive, right? And so we know that if we can do a good job of bringing in Kool-Aid drinkers, people that want to wave the Encore flag because they just are obsessed with our culture, it doesn't matter if they've got a portable book of business. It doesn't matter if they've got 10 years of industry recruiting experience, right? If they fit those 7 core values, they can start as an entry-level associate and evolve into a senior vice president. We've done it, right? And it's because we've systematized what success looks like at Encore Search.
I want to ask you about one of those, and that's resilience. And that is my number one when I'm looking to hire people. I want to find
Yeah.
people who have demonstrated resilience in their life.
Yeah.
So why do you feel it's important?
I think that I just got off the phone with another agency owner in Virginia. And he was like, man, Jeremy, this new generation is soft, man. These kids are on social media all day. They get their feelings hurt, and he said, I don't even want to hire Gen Z anymore. And so what I communicated to him is I said, as a general statement, maybe you can make that assumption, right? But, I know my kids, right? Even though they're 12, 9, and 8, they're in no way soft, right? They grew up on a soccer field, on a football field, on a basketball court. They know how to fail. They know how to fall down, wipe the dirt off, and get back in the game, right? And so, it's really, probing during the interview process to see how has this person overcome adversity, right? And do they have a victim mindset, right? Are they proud of the growth and development? Are they proud of their endurance? Are they fearless, right? And so, like, when you look at how resilience plays a role in my industry, companies like yours retains us and you say, hey, Jeremy, I need a director of manufacturing operations, right? Well, if I just post the job on LinkedIn and check applications, all those are active candidates that are probably unemployed, right? And so in order for you to warrant paying me a recruiting fee, we've got to go poach somebody from a direct competitor. Well, that guy is probably not looking for a job. We've got to make hundreds of cold calls, cold text messages, cold emails. I get far more no's than yeses. And then if I get a live one on the hook, I've got to be a somewhat of a wordsmith in order to get that passive candidate excited about going to work for John Rennie, right? And so somebody that sees what could go right, not necessarily overly obsessed with what's going wrong, is important.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think the whole, being an entrepreneur when you're out on your own without a safety net, you are going to get a lot of you're gonna have a lot of failures. You're gonna screw up and you're gonna have bad months. And if you got to have a team that's gonna say, yeah, that's okay. We got it. We'll do better next month or next week or next order, and so that's what you need. You need people that aren't going to give up when things get tough. And that's what I look for for my business. And again, listeners, if you're listening in, you're saying, well, I don't have a resilient mindset, or I'm not a resilient person. I would say that's one of the really important things that you should develop is a resilient mindset, because I think you're very, very highly employable if you have that.
Yeah, no. And I would say that, when I got divorced in 2019, it was very easy to consume media that was polluting my mind with everything that was going wrong. And it wasn't until I started to change the content that I consumed, right, that helped me shed that fear mindset, right, that anxiety mindset, that victim mindset. And a lot of the information that I consume is very inspirational, right? And not only is it just words, but I actually implement swift action, right? And I think that that's one thing that really breeds excellence is people that make decisions quickly and execute and fail fast, right? Because we know that every single time that we really dive all in, it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, right? But it's that inaction that really kind of slows people down in their career, in their relationships, right? Their friendships. And I think it's important to be fearless as well.
Great advice. Great advice. So what would you say if you were to kind of look over the last, Since you started the company in 2013, what would you say your biggest failure has been?
Oh man. Well, in business or in personal, right?
you can you
Yeah.
could you could take any tack you want.
Yeah. I would say my biggest failure was in 2020 when the government infused $8 trillion into the US economy through the CARES Act, right? And so all these employers got PPP money, they got ERC money. Our company blew up. We became so busy because our clients were creating job opportunities in order to capitalize on a hot market. And the problem that I made was is I kept a bunch of B players that were making a shit ton of money just because it was the right place, right time, right? And I wish that I would have done a good job of capitalizing on bringing in some A players because we probably could have done 50% more revenue. We had
Mm.
had this false sense of accomplishment that we were killing it and growing, but really it was just a byproduct of a hot market, right? Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I was just going to add to that is that one of the areas where you can be the most vulnerable is when you're winning. Like
Yeah, 100%.
if you, especially if you're riding the wave of something that maybe is not something that you did yourself, right? You just got lucky, or you were in the right market at the time, or you had the right offering at the time. And but it feels so good to win sometimes as a leader that we sort of just say, well, look at me, I'm how smart I am, right?
Absolutely.
But I think you can be very vulnerable when you're winning and you don't really digest why is it that we're winning, and look for vulnerabilities even when you're winning.
A perfect example, for your audience is these individuals that are maybe mid to late career leaders, right? Where they might be a focused expert in, IT on-premise infrastructure, right? They might be a Linux expert. And they've just reached that 250 level and they think that they're winning and they've got all this subject matter expertise and technical competency in this vertical, but they didn't even try to educate themselves on cloud infrastructure, right? Well,
Right.
guess what? You get younger, talented individuals coming in and stealing your job because you just sat on your hands and were complacent the whole time and you weren't keeping up with new technologies, right? And I think that that's how it applies to maybe somebody that's a W-2 employee as well.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's really important as we go through our careers that we stay humble and hungry. I think we
Yeah,
we always have to be learning. We always have to be growing. And if you're not, you're going to get stuck in the past, and things are going to pass you by very quick. And your 250 job becomes a I have no job. Yeah,
I have no job. I'm doing consulting,
yeah,
right? And and
yeah,
and and the guy who you're doing consulting for is a kid that you hired out of college who's now the CTO, and he's throwing you $3,000 a month to help with the an on-premise infrastructure to a cloud migration, and you're the dinosaur advisor.
yeah. Exactly. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's really really good advice. I love that. What would you say your proudest accomplishment would be?
I think that my proudest accomplishment is absolutely my children, man.
Mm,
This year we're trending to do 12.5 million in revenue. Our average fee as an organization is about 68,000. So that means that the people that we place are, making about 250K a year, right? But with that being said, even with all the success in business, I would say that it's seeing my boys grow up and be strong men of character and integrity, seeing how they treat their mom, seeing how they interact with their friends, the media that they consume, the respect in which they treat others, right? The humility, the gratitude, the work ethic on the sports fields, right? Seeing my children grow up to be these men that will carry my legacy for generations into the future, that's my proudest accomplishment.
I love that. I love that because it's interesting because I think we do sometimes as entrepreneurs we get too focused on our business and our success, and we tend to ignore the people that love us, the people that depend on us, and that's dangerous. So I think my hat's off to you that you've kind of maintained that balance between business success, but also realizing that I'm a dad
Well,
as well, and I have to be successful as a dad.
absolutely. What's the point in dying with $100 million, right? If your kids are just going to ruin your name, right?
Yeah.
Squander your fortune, right? Then it becomes cost prohibitive for you to even attempt to build that wealth in the first place. And I really didn't realize that was my why, to be quite honest, John, until my ex-wife, she handed my kids a book for Christmas and it said 100 things I love about dad, right?
Mm.
And on every page it was like, dad made me smile when blank, right? And they had to fill it in. And every single thing that was written there had nothing to do with the $3 million house, the Ferrari in the driveway, right? The big company and dad's global fame and success on LinkedIn. It had to do with their feelings, right? It had to do with these 7 core values. That time we played basketball and we were competitive. That time I fell in the lake and I couldn't swim when I was 3 years old and dad jumped in and saved me. It had more to do with these 7 core values than any material object. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
makes
that's
a lot of
whenever
sense.
this light
Yeah.
bulb went off to where it was like, they don't give a shit. My
Yeah.
kids do not care about the business. That will not influence them to be great men of character and integrity. And that's whenever the light bulb went off to where it was like, I don't even need my kids to be wealthy. I've done a good job at creating a mechanism that will create financial security for them to generations to come. I need my children to be elite, right?
Mm.
And I don't care if they're the best artist, the best musician, the best MMA fighter, the best salesperson, the best engineer, the best physician. My children are being bred to be elite individuals. And so when you look at the leadership podcast, right, I think that's what's important in leadership is to recognize that they don't need to grow up to be you, right? They
Mm.
just need to grow up giving a shit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's such an important role that we play as fathers. But it's interesting you say, like, I don't care that they're great in X. I just want them to be great. I
Yeah.
love that. That's such a great mentality. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times sometimes fathers will push their son into the business, or they'll push him into sports, or they'll push him into something that they themselves wanted to be successful in, or
Mhm.
I remember talking to my son the other day, and I was like, this is my advice to you, but just remember that you can just throw that advice out and do your own thing. And
Yeah.
you've got to choose what really gets you excited. But this
Yeah.
is, here's some advice from a guy that's old, but
Yep.
you have to find your path and you have to be passionate towards that path, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, looking back on the business, are there some things that, knowing what you know now, you would have done differently?
Yeah, I would have hired a commercialization team much earlier, right? I was so hyper focused on protecting my gross margins, and that was a number that I was very, very proud of. Driving 3.5, 3.7 million in EBITDA to the bottom line. And then I woke up one day because one of my competitors, his name is Matt Furman. He owns a group called Core Group Resources in Katy, Texas. And we started within about 6 months of each other. And Matt was posting and bragging that he had 61 employees. And here I was with 35 employees. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is Matt smoking me? Right.
Yeah.
And it's because very early on, he started investing in lead generation, marketing resources, and hiring these business development officers to go out and steal market share. Now, granted, his profit margins were not as healthy as mine, right? But when you look at 20% of 20 million, that's still better than 30% of 10 million. Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then that's whenever I said, nah, no, sir. Right. Let's go out and hire a commercial team to go out and create brand awareness in order to capture market share during this impending downturn that I think we're all expecting.
I love that. One of the things that you said in there, which you didn't say, but I read it in there, is the idea you mentioned one of your core values being competitiveness. And this is one of those things that, some people say, well, competitiveness is not good, but I think in a lot of cases it is. Sometimes it's a kick in the pants that we need, right? When we think we're winning, and then we look over somebody else and they're like, they say comparison is a thief of joy, and I agree with
Yeah.
that. But I think to see what's possible, right? When you see another person, you see what they've done, you're like, oh shoot, that is possible, and I know I can do that too, so why am I not doing it? So I think from that standpoint, it shows you what's possible. Like competitiveness, sort of, you're aware of what's happening and it shows you what's possible, and you're like, oh, I can do that too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're only limited by our own thoughts and limiting beliefs, man. It's unbelievable to be in a nation that rewards people on success, right? Whenever I bring on a new client, they don't ask me what my GPA was,
Mm,
they don't ask me where my father went to school, right? It's what can you provide for me, and I'm going to pay you whenever you're able to deliver results, right? And we all have that opportunity to become successful.
yeah, love that. Love it. Well, you're in the recruitment business. You're in the you deal with a lot of transitioning employees. Can you give us any advice in terms of like how do we do a better job retaining talent, attracting talent to our businesses? What are you hearing from people that are exiting their roles, looking for new opportunities? What are some leadership advice that you could give us with respect to
Yeah,
employee
well,
retention?
for the first off, I'll say I'm not an HR consultant, right? And whenever
Right.
it comes to talent retention, I'm the wrong guy to ask because I get paid on turnover, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but with that being said, some of the common reasons why we see A player candidates leave organizations is we see them leave bad bosses. I mean, it's no secret, right? People that are depressing the career advancement of colleagues because they feel threatened by them in some capacity, right? They're not investing in their skills development. They're not investing in their continuing education, right? Not to mention individuals that are just grumpy and insecure, right? And so they take out that anger on their employees, right? Through verbal assaults, right? And so I'm not even here to say that, we've got to provide more work from home flexibility or flex schedule or work-life balance. I don't necessarily think that we're there as employers, but I think that generally speaking, we need to treat people with respect, right? We need to do a good job of doing an analysis of what are this individual's strengths. And if they are underemployed in the role that they're in, how can I create a position that's going to challenge them and retain them, right? We had a young lady um, who was a legal recruiter, and we did an analysis to figure out, does she get it, does she want it, does she have the capacity to do it, right? Where are the areas in which she excels, where are the areas in which she needs improvement? And quickly we realized, doing a data analysis, she's in the wrong seat of the bus.
Hmm.
So then we moved her from a legal recruiter where she was probably a 2.6, right, on an employee performance review, and now she's at 3.8, which is exceeds expectations, as our executive assistant. And so I think that it's important as leaders to have the controls to actually measure the success of an employee and not just operate on gut feel. Do they
Yeah.
have a good attitude at work? Are they punctual? Well, guess what? Those are like the bare minimum, you know? We're measuring things that are far more advanced than just gut feel.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the things you mentioned which I like is that sometimes there are people in the wrong roles and they're high performers are just in the wrong position. I think that's really important, and that's a great takeaway. I've had employees in the wrong role that were failing, and then move them to
Yeah.
a different role, and they're just knocking it out of the park because they
Yeah.
just were in the wrong position. But one of the things you mentioned too, in terms of why people leave, obviously respect is a big issue. It's a big issue with our company. That's our number one principle. When people come on board, we say we treat everybody with respect within these four walls. But one of the things that you said, and I think it really stands out to me, is we've got to challenge people. So one of the things that I find with young employees, you hire them or out of school, they want to be given challenging assignments. If we just give them busy work and we throw them in the corner and say, well, you got to earn your keep around here, you got to pay your dues before you get a chance to do challenging things. These people are going to leave our company. So we also
Yeah.
have to take really talented people and challenge them and have them do difficult things, because I think we get a lot of a players want to do difficult things. They want the
Oh, yeah.
ball in the fourth, in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes on the clock. They're like, give me the
Yeah.
ball. I want the
Yeah.
ball. And if we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
give them the ball, they're gonna like, screw it, I'll go to a different team. So I think
Mhm.
that's interesting too. We have to find ways to challenge our people.
Absolutely. But, especially like you own a manufacturing company, right? We can't have 100% A players, right? We need that operator that's there to pull the lever in order to make the machine work. And if that person wants to be the chief operations officer for the organization, right? then I'm going to have to constantly be backfilling that equipment operator. So it's important to recognize that maybe not all employees need to be challenged, right? We've got a team of smile and dial cold callers that make 1,000 outbound cold calls a week on each individual desk, right? If those individuals want to graduate and be a strategic problem solver for their clients, that's not going to be a good fit for them.
Hmm.
But for the individuals in that group, they've walked away from careers where they had to work nights and weekends. Maybe they're single moms. Maybe they don't have the ability to do that anymore. And so we put them in a 9 to 5, give them a nice base salary with benefits and 401k. We treat them with respect and give them a fair working wage, right? Those individuals are grateful to come to work. And I would say that they're an A player at their specific job, but maybe to some extent, they don't need to be these massive creative problem solvers for the company. And so I think as great leaders, it's important for us to clearly define what an A player is for each individual role in your company,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
the A player accountant is very different than the A player sales guy.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. What would you say are your final messages for our listeners before we leave?
The final message is not all turnover is bad.
Mm.
Whenever you lose somebody, even if they've been with the organization for 10 years, right? Let's say whenever you left ABB, right? They had all of the systems and processes that you had developed from your long career there, running 6 different business units for their manufacturing operations. And so they had the playbook of what John Rennie had built. But the individual that they poached from Honeywell, from Yokogawa, from another systems integrator, right? That person brought new ideas, new processes. They'd taken every single thing that you had built and they provided their own personal spin. And so if that person was an A player as well, hopefully that bred ingenuity, creativity, new products to develop, new processes to implement. And so what I'll say is as the recruiter in the room, not all turnover is bad. It's important to constantly be focused on top grading your team.
I love that. And again, I think it's a chance to upgrade. It's a chance to change when you have somebody leave. Okay, this person had great skills here, but it'd be great to bring in somebody with some different skills to sort of
Yeah.
shore up some other areas in the business that are struggling. So yeah, I
Mhm.
like that. Not all turnover is bad. We have turnover here, and usually we always leave. We always retain our relationship with those employees, but we always seem to do better, and have a growth pattern once we have turnover. So yeah, it's a chance to upgrade. It's a chance to bring in new life, new skill sets, new set of eyes. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. That's fantastic observation. Not all turnover is bad. So I love that.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. Jeremy, how can people find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Jeremy Jenson, Jenson, and I've got a little goat emoji after my name, right? And so if you want to message me, if you want to schedule a call, please reach out on LinkedIn. I check all of my messages. I do have to ignore, the Nigerian prince messages that want to give me $10 million. But with that being said, that's the best resource, right? What our company is focused on is we help employers poach people from the competition. So we're not the right company. If you're looking for a job or you're unemployed, I think the best resource to utilize is to look at open job postings on LinkedIn and Indeed. But if you're a hiring manager that says, "Hey, Jeremy, I think that I need to top grade somebody on my team and have you go poach someone from a competitor," that's where we can help you.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to put links to Jeremy's resources here in the show notes. And again, if there's something that Jeremy talked about that really sparked an interest to you, we'll have his LinkedIn profile here. Reach out to him, and he'll give you an answer, and he'll give you some feedback. He seems like a guy that isn't going to hold back either. So, so reach out to him if you've got some questions. And again, if you're looking to, what did you say? Not upgrade. You said top grade. If you're looking to
Top
top
grade.
grade and you're looking to poach, Jeremy's your guy. So reach
Excellent.
out to him if you're in that position. So Jeremy, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing your story and the advice and the things you learned along your journey.
Thank you so much, John.
Well, thank you again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.